Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
The zero is a marvelous invention despite being nothing. Because without the zero, mathematics as we know it, the ability to count and to use numbers in a so much more constructive fashion would be simply impossible. For those of you that are more familiar, how do we count in Hebrew numbers?
The alphabet.
The alphabet. Ish, right? Aleph through Yud is 1 through 10. What happens after we hit 10?
The 10.
Then we get another 10. And we go 10, 20, 30, 40, up until 100, and then we start counting in hundreds until we top out at 400. And if you want to make a number, you add the letters in a line, right? So if you want to make the number 13, you would take a Yud for 10, you would take a Gimel for 3, and you would now have 13. Amazing. Really hard to do arithmetic like that. Imagine, if you will, trying to do those addition problems that you all did in elementary school where you had, 3 plus 10 equals, and it said Gimel plus Yud equals. You can't visualize the placeholder that comes from having the 0 in that 10, in that ones place that then turns it into a 10. You're all with me so far? It's hard to do this without a blackboard. And we do need to recognize, however, that despite the fact that the Hebrew number system lacks a separate digit of number 10, that is something that came much later from multiple parts of the world, but for us it entered through our exposure to Arabic science, we nonetheless still had the idea implicitly. We didn't use it numerically, but we had the idea implicitly. And I'm talking about this week's Torah portion of Yitro. Everybody's favorite section, right before the Ten Commandments, is the discussion of appointing judges. That is to say, having a hierarchical system of judges that will handle decisions within the community. Yitro, Moses' father-in-law, for whom the parasha is named, finds his son-in-law toiling away, dealing with every single question of legal matter of the entire community, from morning till night, and he is exhausted, as you can imagine, trying to be both teacher and adjudicator for thousands and thousands of people every day. That could get a little exhausting. And so he tells him, you need to appoint a system of judges. You need to have a judge for thousands, a judge for hundreds, and a judge for tens. See the zeros working our way through there? They understood orders of magnitude, even if they didn't have a separate zero, even if they didn't have it in their numerical mathematics system, they understood 10, 100, 1,000 of going up by tens in this process, the digits being added on. But I'm not here to teach you about math. I'm here to question the part of that system that seems the strangest to all of us. We need judges for tens? Pardon? I mean, I understand we want to have a mid-level court for 1,000 for the big issues, for a large group of people that, maybe there are two major factions, tribal or clan arguments. We need somebody who can adjudicate for that group of 10,000 people before kicking it upstairs to Moses if it is beyond their understanding. And I can sort of understand that small scale, it takes a village sort of thinking, me and the other people in my surrounding tents. We sort of need a local, liaison that can help us adjudicate our squabbles and problems, a small claims court, if you will, kind of situation where, 100 of us will look to one person to handle these sorts of issues. But 10? 10? Every 10 people needs one person to be able to act as a shofet, as a dayan, as a judge? Well, yes. And in fact, the lesson of that 10 is incredibly powerful and incredibly important for understanding what Judaism means by having a shofet, having a judge in the first place. You see, you need a judge that knows the people they are judging. First and foremost, this is essential. There was a story in the Talmud, one of the more famous ones that relate to a coup, one of the only known rabbinic coups that we have a record for, where the Beit Midrash, the academy, the university, I guess you would call it for its day, rose up against the dean, Rabban Gamliel of the time, because he continued to belittle and to humiliate one of his colleagues, one of the great rabbis of that generation, Rabbi Joshua. No relationship as far as I know. And after the coup, Rabban Gamliel finally realized he needed to go and apologize to Rabbi Joshua. That yes, he had treated him badly, he had abused his authority and his position and his status in the community, and just as a decent human being, you shouldn't embarrass others. And so he went to Rabbi Yoshua, rather than making Rabbi Yoshua come to him, which was part of the exchange during the humiliation before. And as he goes to Rabbi Yoshua's, he comes to his house, and he looks around and he sees the soot everywhere in the hut and the house and the yard around it. And he says, I see you're a charcoal maker. If you don't know, making charcoal is a real pain in the tuchus. This is not an easy job, and it's not a lucrative job. This is a pretty low on the scale of employment sort of jobs out there, because literally all you're doing is heating wood without burning it in order to burn off the excess gas to make the charcoal. That's not where the fortunes are made. Rabban Gamliel, on the other hand, came from a very wealthy family and never wanted for anything. And Rabbi Joshua, upon hearing his colleague and adversary say, "Oh, you're a charcoal maker," responds, "And woe to the generation whose leaders don't know them." Rabbi Joshua, for that moment, it clicks in his mind. Why had Rabban Gamliel been humiliating him and belittling him, been treating him so badly? Why was he like this? Well, because he didn't know anybody of the people. He was sitting high at the top of the pyramid of that generation, and he didn't know who was at the bottom rungs. He had no contact with their private lives. For him, it was an abstract conversation that was merely an extension of his own power and authority, and those who were at the bottom of the social economic ladder were as foreign to him as the Romans that occupied our country at that time. Their life, their struggles, their problems, the challenges that they faced on a day-to-day basis, knowing that here was a man who not only would come with one of the most insightful understandings of Jewish law to the Beit Midrash, but that each day he had to earn his daily bread by making charcoal of all things. This was something that he was oblivious to. When Yitro told Moses to establish a court for 1,000, for 100, most especially for 10, he was trying to get this point across. You can never bring Torah, you can never bring justice, you can never bring God to the community if you don't actually connect with the community. The whole point is that the Torah is coming down from Shemayim, down from heaven. It is not supposed to get stopped somewhere at the elevation of Moses, and then the rest of us would somehow just magically know it. And Moses is not supposed to ascend from our world and get lodged at the threshold of heaven and become distant from us. The whole point is Moses must know us, we must know Moses, and there must be a system to allow that information to be passed back and forth, because as unfortunately as it happens, Moses cannot be in personal connection with tens of thousands of people, but he can be in connection with the leaders of the thousands, who are in connections with the leaders of 100, who are in connection with the people of 10. This creates a representative chain that all along, everybody will know at least something about everyone else within their community, within their society. Now, you might be wondering, why am I bothering to tell you this? It's not as though you're going to run out and set up your own court system. And that's true. I don't expect anybody here to do so, although it wouldn't hurt if our judiciary was more in touch with the people that it was actually judging. But for our own private life, we too need to make sure that we are not guilty of the crimes of Rabban Gamliel. Now, I'm not saying that all of us here are living, high on the tree of the social economic ladder, and that, we are born with a silver spoon in our mouth. But all of us have people that are distant from us within the community, whether it be to one direction or the other, that we simply don't know. Do we know the life and the struggle of the clerk that helps us in a shop? Of the person that is standing behind the cash register at the gas station? Do we know the life and the struggle of those that sit behind the window at the bank? or those that are dealing stocks and trading in high finance? Do we know what it is like for somebody to be a doctor? What it is like for someone to be a nurse? What it is like for someone to be a stock boy? Do we know people outside of our circles? Sure, if I work in the back rooms of a store, then I know what that life is like. But do I know what it is like to work in the office in New York that is managing the chain of stores? And do they know what I am like? A community only works and justice can only be served when all elements are at least partially aware of not only the existence, but the type of existence that is experienced by all the members of that community. We are living now in a more stratified society than at almost any time in this country's history. Sure, if you go back to Mesopotamia, there were those who lived as demigods in temples and those who lived in squalor in the back alleys of Baghdad. But for most of our country's history, people did mingle. Not always well, and often with a great deal of hate and animosity, but they at least encountered others that were different than them and lived differently than them. But now we have, through self-selection, isolated ourselves from those that are different than us. And that means we are more unaware of our neighbors than at any other point in this country's history. Doctors live among doctors, lawyers live near lawyers, professionals live around professionals, people who are not making the same live with people who are making something similar to them. And never the twain shall cross, and rarely even will their children bump into each other at schools. We have lost the ability to mix, we have lost the ability to understand, and once we do that, we lose the ability to be a community that can create the life that Torah is trying to create for us. So the next time you are out and you see someone, talk to them. Treat them like a human being. See what's on their mind. What is their life like? Take the bus every now and then. Sit near the fancy cafes, even if you can't afford to go in. See what the life is like. See what it is to be on the other side. Because ultimately we are all on the same side, if we remember that. Shabbat Shalom.